So Tiphany Kane is got a master's in education, is known as the Heck Yes Coach. She specializes in professional development, training professional adults and public speaking at conferences. She is also an entrepreneur and writer who brings her passion to the art of the spoken word to people who need help finding their voice. Tiphany is passionate about coaching women to turn life's painful no's in life and business into empowered opportunities to find the yes. Tiphany's mission is to empower and educate women to elevate their voice and story through podcasting and writing and doing other media. Tiphany is the co-founder of Casa Media Productions, as well as the host of 2 podcasts, Radical Audacity of Heck Yes and the Mastering the Podcaster Mindset. Welcome to the stage. You're going to be talking today about elevating your brand and your voice through podcasting. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. All right, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you today. As Bettina said, I'm here to talk to you about how having a podcast can elevate your brand and your voice. Podcasting is an incredible medium in today's marketplace. If you get, I think TikToks are down to 6 seconds now. Reels, 6 seconds. If you get 6 seconds of somebody's attention, you're really lucky. However, with a podcast, people will hang out with you for 45 minutes with no problem. So it is a medium like no other to build what we like to call the know, like, and trust factor. Bettina already went through this. So this is me. These are my podcasts and my company. All right, so let's get into that know, like, and trust factor. It's important to build authority with people so that they want to do business with you. When that happens, you don't have to sell anything. I can tell you right now, I have been on multiple discovery calls this week, and every single one has converted. That person knew they wanted to work with me before they even got on the call because they listened to my podcast. So it's the conversion factor is insane when you have somebody who is listening to you on your podcast. They trust you. They hang out with you on a weekly basis. What are some of the benefits of a podcast? I love that I am coming after Lynette because I think PR and podcasting go hand in hand. It is another way to get that national exposure out. In fact, podcasts go all around the world. My podcasts are heard in 50, 60 different countries around the world. And so there is exposure all over. I get to highlight my expertise. I get to bring in experts that I get to learn from and my audience gets to learn from. And in that way, that's another building trust factor that your audience gets to have with you. Of course, creating valuable content and that intimate connection. There is not an intimate connection like podcasting anywhere out there. And getting to establish yourself as an expert. This podcast becomes a cornerstone of your personal brand. It is wonderful. You get wonderful social media snippets that you get to share all over the place and send out into all kinds of media outlets, which if you're working with a PR person like Lynette, having things to send out to different media outlets is fantastic. So let's talk about podcasts and where they stand in the marketplace. The marketplace is saturated by YouTube channels and blogs, right? But everybody wants to start a YouTube channel. Well, for every 65 YouTube channels out there, there's only one podcast. For every 510 blogs out there, there's only one podcast, which means it's much easier for you to be found and for you to have an impact. Additionally, we're talking money here. There are 162 million listeners in 2021. That number has gone up. We're waiting for the latest data to come out. That number has definitely risen. And in 2021, there was 1.33 billion in ad revenue spent on podcasting. And believe it or not, that number has also skyrocketed as more companies are getting into the ad space in podcasting. What does this mean for you? This means that people are spending money on podcasts. This means large companies are seeing the value of podcasting. And if large companies are seeing the value of podcasting, then you as a creator, as a course creator, as a coach, as an entrepreneur, the value for you to market your personal brand and your personal courses and products is huge. People are looking to you to spend their money. They trust you. Why does podcasting create an intimate connection with the listener? I like to talk about this in the form of 3D and 5D. I'm going to get just a little woo-woo here. When we are in a space where we see people in a 3D, where we are talking and seeing, that's more 3D, right? But sound is 5D. Sound is vibrational and goes into our very core. When people have you in their ears and they're listening to you, you're touching them on a deeper level than any time when they are just watching you, believe it or not. There's so many distractions when they're watching, but when they are just hearing, it becomes a very intimate, deep connection. Having this platform allows you also to connect with other experts in your field. I touched on this a little bit earlier. When you can bring experts in and have powerful dialogues with those experts, your listeners see your expertise even more. They value you because you are bringing those experts into their orbit, somebody they may not have had access to any other way. And my favorite part, and we're going to touch on this in just a moment, is anything you create for your podcast becomes rich, dynamic content that you can use anywhere else. So you can use it on a YouTube channel if you want a YouTube channel. You can use it in a blog if you want a blog. So what are some kind of formats that you can have as a content creator, as a coach, as an entrepreneur? Bring on your current customers. Oh my goodness, the power of testimonials. And there is nothing like a live in action testimonial to bring a current customer on and talk about whatever transformation you made for them. As we all know, as coaches, we want our people going on transformational journeys. And if we can let our listeners know, here's somebody I worked with, and here is their transformational journey. Here's how they benefited from working with me. And they get to hear it from that person's point of view. That is so incredibly powerful. Any content that you have that is important to your audience and your marketplace, you can have a podcast episode that is specifically around that. Maybe you have personal connections with somebody in the community that you want to bring in. I'm doing something right now with a local charity, a nonprofit in my community. We're doing a big event around that with my podcast, and that really brings in that trust factor with your audience. Solving customer pain points. So that's all part of that transformational journey. You can really, your episodes can hone in on really micro pain points of your customers and really dig in there and help them out. Like I said earlier, anything you create for your podcast can become content elsewhere. So if you video, when you're interviewing somebody or you're doing a episode, you just have your camera on and you video, you've got a YouTube video. What you say, you can turn those transcripts into emails. You can turn those transcripts into blogs, articles to submit to different magazines, newsletters, your social media posts. Any of your content for your social media posts can come from your podcast episode. Like I said earlier, your podcast grows your business through this trust factor. You will not have to sell anything. You don't have to sell because people want to buy from you because they trust you. And so it becomes a very natural growth piece. I'm currently launching a program, and I have people begging to be a part of it because they trust me and they trust what I say because they get to spend so much time with me. So just to sum it all up, a podcast is a really important part of building your brand. It helps you to create a loyal customer fan base. You get to create partnerships with other experts, like Bettina and I are going to be working together. So you get to create these partnerships. You get to have a stronger social media presence because now you have content for that. The podcast is just a really powerful part of your marketing plan and your content creation. I would love to help you learn to launch your podcast. And I help people either DIY their podcast or I do your podcast for you. We white label it from start to finish if that's what you would like. So I do have some free gifts I would like to give you. I'll go ahead and put them in the chat. And if anybody has questions for me, I am happy to answer them.
Great presentation. And one of the things that I really appreciate about what you said, Tiphany, can you hear me, Tiphany, okay?
I can hear you beautifully.
Is that you can take one purpose for your podcast. You can have your podcast content and use it in multiple places. As a speaker, you're constantly looking for content. And, our podcast is an hour long, man. And you could just go in there and get you a 60-second. You can make 9,000 TikToks off of one podcast.
Yeah.
And so that is so relevant. It's so powerful. And I can tell you this, the evolution of podcasting, really, I watched our first podcast and my golden retriever wouldn't listen to that episode, but now, it has evolved in how people consume content. One last point I want to make before anybody else has to chime in is that we do our podcast in two dimensions. We do it live and we record it, right? What you brought out, which was really good, that listeners consume the content different than people watching me on Facebook Live. On Facebook Live, I got to be so entertaining. I mean, I've got to do flips and all. I got to have this cool background and all this kind of stuff. But our listeners, our podcasters who are downloading this content intentionally, they listen differently. You know what I'm saying? And so that was a great point, especially for anybody who, may get frustrated if you're trying to do a live and you don't see a lot of viewers. Man, just download that content because people listen differently than they view. Great point.